About a year ago, I did something that honestly sounds a little stupid. I took one of my weekly gym sessions and I swapped it for a walk. It was a long, slow walk outside, most days of the week. It was plain and unremarkable, the kind of thing you'd forget 5 minutes later. And when my next blood panel came back, a few of my markers had quietly moved in the right direction. Now I know exactly how that sounds. You clicked on a longevity video and the big secret is going for a walk. Stay with me, because this is probably the most underrated tool in the entire space. Here's the thing I want to fix first. Most of us have been trained to file walking under, barely trying. The fitness industry spent decades telling you that exercise has to hurt to count. So walking became the thing you do when you're too lazy for a real workout. I bought into that framing for years, and I was completely wrong. When you actually read the longevity literature, walking keeps showing up everywhere. It shows up in all-cause mortality data, in cardiovascular risk, in insulin sensitivity, in cognitive decline, even in cancer recurrence rates. These are some of the largest and most consistent signals in the whole field. So the real problem sits somewhere else. Most of us walk by accident instead of on purpose. We treat it like something that just happens between the important stuff. So we leave most of the benefit sitting on the table. My goal here is pretty simple. I want to change your relationship with walking using real mechanisms and real data. Then I'll give you the exact 4-week protocol I run, so you can start the same day you finish this video. Before I go further, I want to give you one quick and honest note. I'm a guy who experiments on himself. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not licensed to give you medical advice. Everything you're about to hear is population data plus my own N of 1 results. Treat it as a starting point you adjust for yourself. If you've got a medical condition or you take medication, loop in someone who knows your chart first. Do that before you change anything. Your body always gets the final vote. Let's start with the heart, because this is where the biggest longevity lever hides. Peter Attia makes a strong case in Outlive that Zone 2 cardio is one of the highest return investments for a long life. Zone 2 is basically the intensity where you're working, but you could still hold a conversation. For a lot of people, brisk walking is Zone 2. If you're deconditioned, you don't need a bike or a fancy plan to get there. You just need a pace that makes talking slightly annoying but not impossible. That's the sweet spot, and your legs can find it for free. Training in that zone teaches your body to use fat for fuel. It also builds more of the little engines inside your cells. Over months, that raises the ceiling on your aerobic fitness, and that fitness ceiling has a name that matters a lot for how long you live. That name is VO2 max, basically the maximum amount of oxygen your body can actually use when you push hard. Large cohort studies tie higher cardiorespiratory fitness closely to lower all-cause mortality, and the pattern there is brutally clear. People with a higher aerobic floor tend to live longer and stay independent longer. Here's the part nobody tells the beginner. If you're starting from a low base, consistent walking raises that floor on its own. You don't have to sprint to move this number early on. You just have to keep showing up at a pace that mildly challenges you. That's your first mechanism, and it's a big one. Here's a second one, and it runs on a completely different clock. This one's about your blood sugar. Here's the fix that sounds too simple to matter. You go for a short, easy walk after you eat, somewhere around 10 to 15 minutes. Your working muscles pull glucose straight out of your bloodstream to fuel the movement. In one trial, a few short walks spread across the day after meals lowered post-meal blood sugar more than a single longer walk did. The exact size of that effect really depends on the person and the meal, so I won't pretend there's one magic number. Think about how little that costs you. You just walk around the block after lunch in whatever you're already wearing. It doesn't cost you any extra time, and you're smoothing out one of the most important signals your body sends across an entire lifetime. This next part is the one that surprised me the most. Walking does double duty here, working as cardio for your heart and genuine maintenance for the brain you have to age with. Large observational studies keep tying regular physical activity, including plain walking, to a lower risk of cognitive decline later in life. There's a creativity angle too, and the numbers here are genuinely fun. A Stanford study found that walking gave divergent thinking a real lift, which is basically your ability to generate fresh ideas. In that study, about 81% of participants came up with more creative ideas while walking than while sitting. That's why my best ideas almost never show up at my desk. A lot of that brain protection is boringly mechanical, which is exactly why I trust it. Walking pushes more blood and with it more oxygen up to your brain. That's the organ that has to last you a lifetime. It also feeds steadier mood and deeper sleep. Both of those quietly support how well your memory holds up across the decades. So if you've ever solved a problem halfway through a walk without trying, that wasn't luck. You were literally changing the state of your brain by moving your legs. That's a strange and wonderful thing to do for free. The next mechanism is all about timing. And honestly, it might be the most underrated one on this whole list. Your body runs on an internal clock. That clock is desperate for a clear signal about when the day has actually started. A walk outside in the morning is one of the cleanest signals you can possibly hand it. When you get bright outdoor light early, you help anchor your circadian rhythm for the day. That tends to sharpen your morning energy and, over time, support a steadier sleep-wake cycle. And good sleep, as you already know, sits underneath almost every longevity marker we care about. So, a single morning walk is quietly doing a few jobs at once. You get your easy zone too, while you also settle your nervous system down. On top of that, you nudge the internal clock that shapes how well you sleep night after night. That is a serious return on 20 pretty quiet minutes. Here's a mechanism almost nobody talks about, and it genuinely changed how I think about sitting all day. Your cardiovascular system has a built-in pump, and that pump is your heart. Your lymphatic system is the network that clears waste and ferries immune cells around. It has no central pump like the heart, so it leans on two things instead. The vessels squeeze rhythmically on their own, and that drives most of the flow when you're at rest. Muscle contraction from movement then adds a real push on top. So when you sit still for hours, that muscle-driven push mostly goes quiet. Flow then leans on the weaker pumping of the vessels alone. When you walk, every stride acts like a gentle pump that speeds lymph along and helps your immune cells make their rounds. You are quite literally moving your own defenses around just by heading out for a walk. I love this one because it completely reframes the whole day for me. Movement gives an entire waste clearing system a real boost it just doesn't get while you sit. The system won't grind to a halt without you, but you're clearly leaving flow on the table. That matters just as much as burning calories or hitting some target. Okay, so we've established that walking hits 5 different systems at once. Now let's get to the question you're actually asking. How much do you really need and how fast do you have to go? This is where the data gets genuinely exciting because the numbers are lower than the internet made you believe. For years, 10,000 steps was treated like a magic threshold. Here's the strange part of that story. That number actually came from a marketing campaign for a Japanese pedometer back in the 60s. So the number you've been chasing was basically an advertising slogan. The real data tells a much friendlier story. Large pooled analyses combine more than a dozen device-based cohort studies. They show that most of the benefit arrives well before 10,000. Somewhere around 7,000 to 8,000 steps a day is linked to a big drop in all-cause mortality. That's compared to very sedentary people way down near 2,000 steps. To put a rough number on it, 7,000 steps was tied to roughly a 47% lower risk of dying compared with people down near 2,000. Keep in mind, this is an association, not hard proof that steps alone did the work. The sweet spot also drifts a little with age. People over 60 grab most of the benefit around 6,000 to 8,000 steps, while younger folks keep gaining up toward 8,000 to 10,000. Either way, the target sits comfortably below that famous 10,000 mark. Now here's a nuance I want to be honest with you about. Some research suggests a brisk pace adds something on top of your raw step count. I'll be straight with you though, because this particular finding is genuinely contested. The strongest pace effects tend to show up in self-reported studies. They mostly fade once researchers control for your total step volume. So I still push the pace myself, but I treat it as a likely bonus rather than a settled fact. So the two levers are simple. Get your daily volume into that 7,000 to 10,000 range and make a meaningful chunk of it brisk enough to count as zone 2. You don't need both to be perfect every day. You just need to stop treating every step as equal because a brisk step is quietly worth more. Now let me make this personal. A blanket step target is useless if it ignores where you're actually starting from. If you're sitting at 2,000 steps a day right now, please don't lurch straight to 8,000 tomorrow. That kind of jump is how people wreck a shin or a knee and quit inside a week. Instead, take your current daily average as your honest baseline and add somewhere around 1,000 to 1,500 steps each week. If you'd rather think in percentages, aim for 10 to 15% more volume each week. That's a sane and sustainable climb. You've got 3 separate dials for raising the challenge, and I turn only one at a time. You can walk faster or find a hill for incline, or you can simply walk longer. If plain walking already feels too easy for you, that's a real signal and not a brag. It usually means your flat straw has dropped below true zone 2. Add some incline or pace until your breathing tells you you're working again. Let me knock out a couple of quick answers to the questions I always get. You can absolutely split your walking into 3 short chunks across the day. Your body just tracks the total regardless of the calendar slot. Everyday steps count too, so pacing on a phone call or hauling groceries all feeds the same number. And if your knees, feet, or lower back start complaining, back the volume down. Hold there for a week before you climb again. Now I need to pump the brakes on my own enthusiasm for a second because I really don't want to oversell this. Walking is an incredible base, but it is not a complete fitness plan on its own. If you're coming straight off the couch, brisk walking can genuinely lift your aerobic fitness for a good while. But once your body adapts, an easy stroll may stop reaching true zone 2 for you. A fitter person often has to push the pace or add a hill to feel anything at all. So here's how I actually hold both of these ideas at the same time. Walking is the daily base that almost everyone underuses, and you really should build it in first. But it works best as the floor of your fitness, one piece of a bigger structure. Keep 2 or 3 real strength sessions in your week. Let walking be the thing you do every single day around them. That combination, walking paired with strength work, is what the longevity research actually points toward. Here's the bigger limitation, and it's the one I care about most as I get older. Walking does very little to help you hold on to your muscle. It also does almost nothing for your bone density or your balance, and it won't protect the raw power your body starts shedding after 40. Those jobs get done by resistance training, by lifting something heavy enough to challenge your structure directly. Alright, this is the part I actually promised you. Everything above is useless if it doesn't slot into a real week with a real job and real obligations. So here's the exact structure I run, broken into 4 weeks that build on each other. You can start week 1 the same day you finish this video. The whole philosophy here is gentle progression. We're not trying to shock your body. We're trying to build something you'll still be doing in a year. So each week we add one small demand, and we never sacrifice consistency to chase intensity too early. But before you take a single step, I want you to spend 5 minutes turning this into an actual experiment. An experiment needs a baseline, otherwise you're just walking around hoping you feel better. So write down where you're starting from today, because future you will want something honest to compare against. Keep it simple and grab a handful of numbers you can actually get. Note your average daily steps from the past week, and time yourself on one walking route you can repeat later. Take your resting heart rate first thing in the morning, and your blood pressure too if you happen to track it. Then rate your energy and your sleep. Rate your mood too on a rough 1 to 10 scale. Those subjective numbers matter more than people admit. Once you've got that snapshot, you leave it alone and you run the 4 weeks. At the end, you measure the exact same things again and you compare them side by side. That single before and after turns a calendar of walks into a genuine test you can trust. It's how you'll know whether any of this actually earned its place. The only goal this week is to prove to yourself that the habit fits. You're going to take one walk every single day, and it only has to be 10 minutes long. Pace doesn't matter yet, and distance doesn't matter yet. The entire point is to make the act of lacing up feel automatic and unremarkable. I want you to attach that walk to something you already do, like right after your morning coffee or right after lunch. When you bolt a new habit onto an old one, it sticks far better than willpower ever will. By the end of the week, stepping outside should feel like less of a decision. This week, we keep the daily walk, but we move one of them into the morning and take it outside. You're aiming for 10 to 20 minutes of walking within an hour or so of waking up. Remember the body clock mechanism, because this is where you start cashing in on it. We're also going to stack one more walk onto your day, a short one right after your biggest meal. 10 minutes is plenty. and it's doing that quiet work on your blood sugar we talked about earlier. So by now, you've got a morning anchor walk and a post-meal walk running most days. Now we bring in pace, because volume alone leaves value on the table. 3 times this week, I want one of your walks to be genuinely brisk for at least 20 minutes. Use the talk test to find the right effort. You should still be able to speak, but you'd really rather not sing. You don't need a heart rate strap for this, though it's nice if you have one. Your own breath is a good enough gauge when you're starting out. The other days stay easy, because those relaxed walks are still doing real work on your recovery and your head. By the final week, we're assembling the full picture. Your target is landing in that 7 to 10,000 step range on most days. A few of those walks should be brisk enough to count as real zone 2. It sounds like a lot until you realize how much of it hides inside a normal day. The trick is to stop treating walking as one big scheduled event. You take the stairs, you park farther away, you take a call on your feet and pace the hallway. Those scattered minutes add up faster than a single planned march ever could. They're the reason this protocol survives a busy week. Here's my honest promise about the results. You probably won't feel a lightning bolt in week 1, because that's just not how this works. What you'll notice instead is subtler and better. Your afternoons feel less foggy, and your sleep gets a little deeper. After a couple of months, your resting numbers start drifting in the right direction. One study found that walking could go head-to-head with an actual drug. There's a famous trial called the Diabetes Prevention Program. Researchers ran it in the United States and published it in 2002. It's one of the most respected studies in this whole area. It pitted lifestyle changes against a common diabetes drug called metformin. The lifestyle arm centered on modest weight loss and simply moving more. The goal there was at least 150 minutes of activity a week, most of it brisk walking. That works out to roughly a brisk half hour, 5 days a week. And here's the result that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. That whole lifestyle program didn't just hold its own against the drug. In stopping people from crossing into type 2 diabetes, it actually outperformed metformin. But I want to be straight with you about what that arm really was. It wasn't walking alone. It bundled at least 7% weight loss, diet changes, and the activity together, with real coaching behind it. So think about what walking actually is when you frame it that way. It's one of the central tools inside a program with a real dose-response curve and real mechanisms, and that whole program beat a drug we take seriously. Walking itself is essentially free, and for most healthy people, the downside stays small. Just build up sensibly and respect your joints along the way. Quick and honest reminder, this is one guy's self-experimentation. Bring in a real doctor for anything that touches your own chart. If you've got a real medical condition or you're on medication, talk to someone who knows your chart first. Do that before you change anything. Everything here is population data plus my own N of 1, and your body gets the final vote. But if you've been treating walking as not enough this whole time, I really hope this moved it. All it takes is a door and 10 minutes. Go outside today and start walking into the rest of your life. I'll see you on the path.